Ireland's mother struggled to settle down, and by the age of 10, he'd changed schools 6 times. They had also changed home 9 times, including a short spell in a homeless shelter for women and children.
And then she met a new husband. They had a child together, and they made the decision that it was too hard to raise both these children in the same household. And so he was sent away and put in a home. And the message that gets sent when a parent does that is, you're just baggage. You're not a part of my future. I don't love you. I'll dispose of you when and as I see fit.
And this is a really crucial time for our development as children. Our relationships with our parents are absolutely fundamental at this point in time. And when you have an interrupted or a disrupted attachment, particularly with your mother, that has a real impact on your ability to form attachments with other people throughout your life. So you've got all of the ingredients for at least a problematic life, but unfortunately, it's not just problematic, it becomes fatal.
Constantly on the move, Ireland regularly found himself as the new boy at yet another school.
Witnesses that we spoke to told us that he was picked on at school, and he was a bit of a loner, really.
He was not a popular child at school. He was bullied by others. And when you have that sense of isolation from your peers and that inability to form those relationships, you do really turn in on yourself and you become very insular, very isolated. And your reaction to others' behaviour towards you is maladaptive, it's abnormal. So he would react by being violent, he would react by setting fire to things. So there are some real warning signs here of a very, very troubled individual indeed.
In 1966, 12-year-old Ireland found himself a summer job in his hometown of Dartford.
At one point he was working in a fairground and a man propositioned him with gifts if he had sex with him. We can only with hindsight say that that may well have shaped his view of gay men.
And often sexual predators will prey on people like him. So they would have picked up on those vulnerabilities. They would have picked up on the fact that he was the odd one out, that he didn't have much of a support network around him, and targeted him for these advances.
You have, in this petri dish of adolescence, all these things added together. Abandoned, mother struggling in poverty, school to school, bullied, an extraordinary conflation of ingredients that might make a serial killer. And slowly but surely, that reality began to emerge.
As Ireland grew up, life didn't get any easier. He often found himself on the wrong side of the law.
By the time he was in his late 20s, he'd already accumulated a fairly substantial criminal record. He'd been in and out of prison for things like robbery, theft, deception type offences, and he became interested in survivalism.
Admitted. So here's an individual who knows how to cover his tracks, and he's got that in mind from the outset.
He was not a teenager or an aggressive young man of 22. He was a man who had thought out what was going to happen. And what was going to happen was a spree of killings that was to send shivers down the spine of the gay community in London.
As well as a type of victim, Ireland had identified a hunting ground, a gay pub in the Earl's Court district of London called the Coleherne Arms. He was confident he'd be able to entice his prey.
He'd gone from this kind of skinny youth to being quite a burly, well-built, big guy. He was quite tall, a sort of imposing presence. Obviously, in that sense, that sort of sadomasochistic thing, he might have appealed to a certain type of man who wanted to be dominated by another man.
With everything in place, Ireland was ready to kill for the first time. On the night of March the 8th, 1993, he met his unsuspecting victim.
Peter Walker was a 45-year-old theatre director that Ireland met in the Coleherne Arms. They went back to Walker's flat.
Peter Walker has 2 dogs, a Labrador and a German Shepherd. They shut the dogs in the living room, and proceed into the bedroom. Peter accepts that sadomasochism is part of the routine that he likes to play, part of the role, and therefore allows Ireland to tie him to the bed.
And Ireland whipped him, and he held a plastic bag over his head and suffocated him.
With plastic bag asphyxia, you're looking at a situation where it's lack of oxygen that causes you to die rather than lack of blood flow to your brain. And that is a much more prolonged and much more unpleasant feeling. Anyone who's kept their head under a swimming pool for a bit longer than they normally would will know that air hunger, as it's called, that desire to breathe, and knowing that that's not going to be allowed would be a terrible way to die.
After killing Peter Walker, Ireland created a bizarre spectacle at the scene.
He drapes condoms over his victim's face. He poses 2 teddy bears in the oral sex position. And this is demeaning to his victim. So he's not just killed his victim, he's humiliated him as well. And this is something that Ireland is doing to say, hey, everybody, look at me. This isn't just a murder. This is more than just a murder.
And Ireland's cruelty didn't end there.
He set fire to his pubic hair. He said later to see what it smelt like. The poor man was already dead. Why humiliate his body anymore?
Ireland didn't flee Peter Walker's flat with any urgency. He spent the night there, cleaning up any evidence that he may have left behind before disposing of the murder kit on the morning train back to Southend.
He was thrown cuffs in the Thames or out of a train window and disposed of every single murder weapon that he used to kill or strangle them.
So clearly, evidence that would be on that.
To go home to the flat.
After forcing Emanuel Spiteri to give him his cash card and PIN number, Ireland strangled him to death with a rope. This time, the 39-year-old killer tried a new way to hide the evidence.
There'd been an attempt to burn the flat. The furniture had been piled up. He'd clearly set fire to it. Oxygen had run out, and that's why it went out. And very, very fortunately, because it was a top-floor flat, and he could easily have killed people below and to the side of it.
We know that he's done a lot of reading around cases of serial murder. He's probably got an awareness that fire is one of the few things that will destroy DNA. So I think what's going on here is that he's trying to destroy the evidence that links him to the scene. But at the same time, he wants recognition for the crime as well. What he was doing was creating another murder, creating another scene, and trying to get recognition, but still maintain that anonymity.
Luckily, the fire Ireland had started had gone out and the flat didn't burn down. 3 days later, on the 15th of June, Emanuel Spiteri's landlady found her lodger dead and called the police. They retraced Emanuel Spiteri's last steps and for the first time got a look at the killer's face.
Fortunately, he was captured on CCTV at Charing Cross Station, so we've got Emanuel, 5'2", in front of Colin Ireland, 6'1", on a single shot just coming out of the tube station. Not very clear of the head, but you can see the build and the height, and clearly you've got Emanuel in front of him.
So that was a crucial piece of evidence. Although, obviously, it was not a piece of evidence which would necessarily confirm that he was the killer, but it was that kind of circumstantial evidence on which a case can be built.
Armed with the image, the police went on full offensive to try and catch the killer.
They managed to blow up the image to get something that was a reasonable representation of Ireland. They didn't know what Ireland looked like at the time, but it was something that they could use in publicity to attract attention to the case, to circulate, crucially, amongst the gay community.
Myself and Ken John did a midnight press conference because we were concerned that people were being too relaxed about it. We gave a description of who we were looking for and to warn them that they had to be careful because the next one could be you.
I think there was a general call out amongst the gay community to be very careful who you go home with tonight, kind of thing. There was a great fear, there was great concern.
With the police closing in, Colin Ireland decided there was no point in hiding, and on the 19th of July, he went to see a solicitor.
He decided that I'll go into the solicitor, and he gave an affidavit. He said that, yes, I am the man in the video. Yes, I did go to Emmanuel Spiteri's address, but when I got to the front door, there was another man in the flat. I didn't want a threesome, so I went home. It was too late to get a train, so I slept in a nearby churchyard.
Unbeknownst to Ireland, someone from the solicitor's office passed on his details to the police, who already had his fingerprints on file from previous offences.
Eventually we got Ireland's name, cross-matched it against the mark, and it was his. So that placed Colin Ireland in the crime scene, and although you can't date a fingerprint, it most certainly helped in the totality of the evidence.
On the 20th of July 1993, Colin Ireland was arrested. On the 22nd, he was charged with the murder of 33-year-old Andrew Collier. The following day, on the 23rd of July, he was charged with the murder of 41-year-old Emmanuel Spiteri.
If Colin Ireland had not been caught when he was, he would have continued to kill relentlessly until he was eventually stopped. It is the classic element of any serial killer. They won't stop until someone stops them.
And there was lots of work done. We had ID parades, we had voice ID parades, forensication, and lots of other things. He never opened his mouth for 3 days. But fortunately, because of the similar fact evidence from the